Well, hi everyone. You've got Dan and Angela Clark here with Heart to Heart, and we are going to interview for the second time Melina Oine. Did I say it right, Melina?
You did. You
Yay.
got it.
Okay, so I'm so excited because something exciting has happened since we had her on last time, and she's had a major accomplishment.
Wow.
And being that, Worldwide Church of God people, that's the thing. Worldwide Church of God Truth Seekers is the name of my Facebook page and my YouTube channel. And because just people that are trying to get out of what we were all involved in, what we've always believed, trying to get free from that. We're truth seekers, seeking the truth about life, about who we are and all of that. So I am so pleased to be interviewing her, Melina, today, because she's one of the rare people probably in the Worldwide Church of God that has done a major accomplishment. And because of our self-esteem issues. So Melina recently moved to Southeast Washington State, where she now lives with her daughter, and has just recently become not only board certified, BCPA, as an independent patient advocate, but she's also just graduated with a bachelor's degree. And
Wow.
I'm not
Master's, actually.
master's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Master's
Oh.
degree,
Which
actually,
master's?
yes.
Tell me the name of the master's degree.
It's a Master of Arts in Health Advocacy.
Yes, that's
Wow.
that's the piece I needed. So we're so anxious to hear the story because the journey of her graduating was just glorious. She shared it out to all of us on Messenger, to her friends, and just kind of shared the joy of it all. And, we weren't allowed to have that in Worldwide. We weren't allowed to share joy of accomplishment because it was considered to be prideful, worldly. And my husband here, this is Dan Clark, and he was a Jehovah's Witness. They had the same kind of belief that you didn't want to be a part of the world. You certainly don't go to
No
college.
pride, no nothing. Pride's before a
Yep.
fall, no self-esteem.
Right.
The self-esteem, well, and women especially didn't go to college.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, especially women. We were the stay home and be good little quiet little mouses, kind of like children who are to be seen and not heard, right?
Yeah.
I mentioned that before.
How long did that take to unravel that? I mean, that's a lot of brainwashing, that man organization and women are less. I just wondered how long that took to, can we?
Well, yeah, but I want to say something first before you say that.
Good.
So
Sure.
I believe personally that the divine guidance in our lives is, I feel like there's a divine synchronicity, a divine thing going on here because of the way this happened with Melina. It was truly like she could never have foreseen how this was going to go down. And she's going to tell the story in a minute. Now, Dan, kind of the same thing happened. And with me, I feel like the divine, whatever you want to call God, okay, was helping out because Dan, he was kind of in a situation where he wasn't allowed to go to college or anything else like that. And so what happened was he was sent by his work to go out of the country to Spain, to Los Angeles for months at a time, and was very little in the Kingdom Hall as a Jehovah's Witness. And so when he came back, he saw the dysfunction that was going on, and he saw the crazy, polyester suits that were too long and sleeves hanging way down, and their cars were falling apart, leaking oil. And he's like, "Oh my gosh!" Because he's hanging around with rich
You'd had time and space away from that dysfunction,
Yes.
and then
Yes,
when you come
exactly.
back to it, it's so much like it's hard to not, like, you can't not see it,
Yes,
sometimes.
and I feel like that was orchestrated, by the universe, by God, whatever you want to call God. And same thing happened to me. I was in Worldwide Church of God. I got kicked out. I got just what do you call it? Just not disassociated, excommunicated.
Excommunicated.
Yes.
I know, I
Yeah.
had to stop and think too. I'm like,
But I had just gotten married and well, a year and a half before, and then I had a baby. Okay, so I had a brand newborn baby. I got kicked out at that point for a ridiculous reason. I think I shared this before, but a really stupid beyond stupid. And I didn't do anything wrong or anything, and they didn't care. Just you didn't do what we like, and so you're out. Just that's all there is to it. So
you
I
showed an inkling that you might think for yourself.
right, and
That's
so
what it was. You showed
exactly,
an inkling
that's
that you might
exactly
think
what
for
it was.
yourself.
So it ended up that I bought a piece of property up in the mountains and I started building a home, and I couldn't go down to services anyway. My mom started going to some other, at least keep the Sabbath, keep the holy days kind of places, right?
Right.
But no, now I don't have a car. Now I can't go down. Now I've got kids, 3 kids. Oh my God, now I got 3 kids. Cannot go down and to do anything down in town, an hour away from where I lived. So I was forced to just be around my own town with my people that I'd met there. Well, one thing led to another, where because of that being, I couldn't go to town, And over time, I started discovering certain things, and that led me out. So it was being stuck in the mountains without a car, buying a piece of land in the mountains, and then being isolated up there. So kind of like Dan, being out of the country, that caused him to be able to come back and see for himself that something's not right here. Well,
Something was wrong. Yeah,
and so
something was
me,
terribly wrong.
yes, and so me being
Yeah.
around other people that were not the people that I normally would hang out with, because I really didn't have any other choice, that caused me to see the truth about what was really going on. See, it's like a roundabout way where you don't expect. So
Right.
Melina
Yeah.
is going to tell the story now about how this went down, that she, had an opportunity, and then she took it, not knowing that and not only that, but even just the fact that she decided to do this college thing was miraculous all in itself. So, and why don't you tell us
It was
about how
huge.
that all went down, what happened, and all of that?
Well, yeah, it was and it was a huge step. It was one of those moments along the way that I just really, and I'm sure you've had them too, where, you're in that moment and that in that moment, something has changed
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
Right. And the decision to go to school was one of those moments, or even really the decision to apply, the decision to try to go to school, not just to go, but to try to go to school. And this is something that, the cult they didn't encourage education, and they discouraged it. I remember it being a very big deal that my mom was in college, but she was in college for a music degree. And it was, I think it was when Koch Sr. was head of the church. And so, she did, but it was kind of the scandalous thing in some, conversations. And my mom was always a little bit of the rebel. And, so I remember that. And I had that example of, even though being in the cult, and having that environment of, you don't learn. I remember like in elementary school, doing exercises like, what do you want to be when you grow up question, right? That's always a challenging one anyway, when you're 6 or 7 or 8, right? Like, I don't know what I want to be.
Right.
But, it seemed a ridiculous question to me because, well, I knew what I was going to be. I was going to grow up and be a mom. I was going to grow up and be a wife. And while those were things that I wanted, it was like that was where it stopped.
Right.
But I did actually want to learn. Like, I've always been a learner. I always have, and it got me in a lot of trouble because I asked a lot of questions. And I have always had a drive to learn. And I wonder sometimes how much being in the cult and realizing as an adult how isolated in many ways I was, even though I was right there in the middle of, society, right? I went to public school for a while. I didn't have a lot of friends, but I had 1 or 2 friends that weren't part of the cult. I didn't see them very often. But I had a little bit of that outside, although when I got older, I found out that at least one of them was also in a cult that was very similar to our cult. So that was probably why it was acceptable. There was a lot of overlapping beliefs. But, and I mean, who knows though? I mean, that's just speculation. But, the point though is that, learning it was discouraged. There was, that prescribed role that you were going to be as a woman in particular. And I'd come home and I'd say, we did this exercise in school, and I want to be this. And I remember every time I would come back with something, it was like shot down, right? That was discouraged. It was, well, that's, you don't want to be that because then you'll end up doing X, Y, Z. And it was usually, a drug addict, or I think one of them was I wanted to be a singer, right? I wanted to sing. And that wasn't okay because I didn't want to sing like in choir. I enjoyed doing that, but it wasn't, I was thinking as a career, like working, like becoming a known singer, and so it was things like that. But I always wanted to go to college. I actually finished high school early. I was homeschooled. I think we talked about that a little bit, because we talked about the master's program a little bit last time, if I'm remembering correctly. But and my mom, you know, she actually very much believed in homeschooling, and it wasn't a case of, you know, just in order to keep me isolated from worldly things. It was, you know, we actually did learn. I do think that probably certain subjects like history wasn't really focused on as much as it would have been necessarily like in public school. But I got all the important things that, you know, and I'd finished school or high school early, and I'd wanted to go to the community college. And I actually, my mom tried to help me apply, but I didn't have a diploma, and I was too young to take the GED test. They have a limit on, you cannot be younger than a certain age. I believe it was 16, and I
Oh,
was 15 at the time.
wow. So you had to
And
wait till 16.
what was that?
You had to wait until you're 16 then.
Well, you know, this was around the time my parents were divorcing, and I was working full time and helping my mom pay bills. By the time I turned 16, I had like lost that like motion forward. And, you know, I mean, it was a needed thing. Like my mom, we were living in Hawaii, and she was a single mom with 2 children under the age of 18, and I was working. So, and I didn't have other responsibilities. So I, you know, I contributed. And, but that became more important because it was a way of keeping my dad out of the house
Oh, wow.
too. Like, in addition to, you know, just, you know, wanting to help, of course. But, you know, so I'd kind of lost that momentum, and then I'd still planned on going, but I met my husband that you know, my now ex-spouse, but my husband for a long time at almost 18. I was 17, almost 18, and he was in the Navy. He was actually, you'd said a Marine, but he was actually a submariner. So he was stationed on submarines and would actually go and submerge underwater for long periods of time. And that was what he did for work. And so, you know, there's a base out of Pearl Harbor, and he was stationed there, and that's where I met. And we, you know, ended up having what I can now look at and realize was, you know, a very rapid trauma bond relationship. We, you know, moved in very quickly. We got married very quickly, and you know, had kids really quickly. And I don't regret having kids really quickly because with my health stuff, it really was, I think, probably the best time for it. It would have been really hard to do later. But, you know, it took my life on a different path, right? It took me down the path of wife and mom. I really did want, like, I wanted to be able to stay home with the kids when they were little and really enjoy that time. And my, you know, spouse at the time wanted that too. At least that's what they said. And so that's what I did. But
what's trauma bond again?
so trauma bonding, you know, the best reference to it, and the way I explained it in the first video was a little bit, it wasn't as articulate as I wanted it. Definitely was more nervous and just kind of overall, you know, having a harder time talking about things related to the cult publicly for the first time. But today, I think, today I think I'll be able to probably do a little bit better of a job. So trauma bonding is when you can kind of think of it similarly to Stockholm syndrome.
Mm.
It's where you bond with your abuser,
Yeah.
and you know, and that bond is based off of that, you know, a cycle of abuse, essentially.
Got it. I'm so glad to know this because that happened to me. But and in fact, I believe it happened to my kids. And it's so hard because they say that only 1% out of anybody in the world ever even get out of that.
And you know, like everybody around me thought that it was like, you know, they loved it. They thought it was great. They thought he was this really wonderful person. And in some ways, you know, it was a good relationship. But it was, and it was definitely better than, you know, the environment that I had been in prior, in terms of, you know, I was away from the cult. My ex wasn't religious, and so there was no pressure on me to, you know, attend services where I might have trauma reoccur. I'd put a lot of that on myself for a while until I came to terms with the fact that I wasn't going to be somebody who went to church. But it, you know, it took me on a path of being, like I said, mom, wife. My ex was gone all the time because of being on submarines, and we had 3 young kids, and our youngest one had, still has, but at the time we didn't know what they were. We were still trying to figure it out. Multiple rare conditions. And I was fighting, and this is actually where my advocacy story begins, is in learning to advocate for her. But it took me away from the path of education. And I've always been very self-driven. I've always been somebody who wants to learn. And so I have really, in my adult life, spent a lot of time learning, realizing kind of that even though I was still among some people in the community, there were a lot of gaps in what I knew and understood, not just about like self and relationships or how trauma affects how your mind works and even how your mind develops, but just about life and society, right? And so I just started learning. And then when my daughter was diagnosed with her conditions and she was having a lot of medical issues, that learning turned towards medical learning. And I've never been a clinician. I've never been somebody that works in a hospital or a clinic, but I have seen so many things, and my experience is really broad because because it's been those rare circumstances, so they become the the crazy things, like the stories that you hear and go, no way is that true. But they were all learning experiences, and that was one of the things that I really tried to focus on coming out of the cult, was knowing that I had a lot of things to figure out and just being open to learning.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say one thing, Melina. Probably a lot of people, maybe I shouldn't say a lot. That's not right to say. But there's probably plenty of enough people that are going to be watching this show, worldwiders, who still really don't understand, at least not completely, what even is trauma, period.
Yeah.
Can you give a kind of your experience of what you have experienced, what that feels like or what it is?
Oh, that's well, I mean, I'm happy to answer it, but it's going to take us on a very different path than I think we want.
Let me just say real quick, just so I can make it really brief, okay? It's like when you've had a traumatic experience, this is my experience with it.
Yeah.
Is that your body kind of goes into a numb it down because you can't take it. And you'll have a myriad of things physically that you experience, so that, you can't quite, your brain gets kind of mushy maybe, or maybe it'll start out as a lower backache and then it goes around to the front, maybe even makes your ovaries hurt, kind of a thing, or some other kind of a symptom that, each and every time, if you don't get that under control, it's going to be full blown. You're out of control, where you just feel like you're just not yourself. You're kind of a numbed down, can't really function very well. And the only way to get out of it is to go to sleep and wake up the next day. That's pretty much how it was for me. And so there are therapies involved that help you to kind of get yourself back into alert mode, that are not, they don't work all the time really quickly, but at least it does help you get through a situation. Like, for example, putting a rubber band on your finger and snapping it to try to get back into the present moment, or looking at a wall and putting your feet to the ground, feeling the ground, putting your hands on the table, feeling the table, to ground yourself back into the here and
that's the key word right there, right? It's to ground yourself kind of back in reality.
Otherwise, you just kind of feel like kind of floaty,
right.
And so, and that's where you're not totally 100%, with your mind sharp as a tack, kind of a thing. And so anyway, I just, for those of us that are not absolutely sure, like, what is trauma, because we had a lady the other day,
what it feels like.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a much shorter answer. It was a little bit of a different question than I thought you were asking too. So yeah, for me, I freeze. My response is to freeze. And I shut down, everything except what is right in front of me right then, surviving that moment.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a disconnection.
Yes.
Sometimes it's like, so usually it's just like it's happening to somebody else. It's right. I'm there. I'm not necessarily an outer body type experience, right? But just where my mind is there, but it's separate from the things that are happening here.
A bit of a disassociation, but not
very much. Yeah, very much. Definitely dissociation. And for me, I feel like every nerve in my body is on fire. And I get tight in my chest. I feel claustrophobic. And I've recognized actually this feeling. I've run into it a couple of times, more than a couple of times, in sessions where my therapist, has seen a pattern of things that concern her. And I haven't been kind of keying into some of the things that she's been trying to help me work on to help change that. Every once in a while, we'll have a kick me in the butt session where it kind of just knocks me flat on my butt and I leave it feeling a little shell shocked. And in those sessions, a lot of times I will get a feeling, she'll say something that, it's so on the nose, right? Like it's so just right there that you feel it viscerally, like you feel it in your gut, like someone kicked you in the gut, or like someone just took your breath away. And the sessions always leave me thinking about things I'm very uncomfortable with. But she's always right. And it's typically when I've shifted into that pattern of responses that happens after like a trauma has occurred or been re-triggered, where I literally think about things and talk about like the words that I use and the way that I describe and speak about things actually changes. And I've observed this in other people that I know who've experienced trauma too. My best friend, I can call it and I can point to when she's starting to struggle with certain things.
Mhm.
And I've learned how to kind of snap her out of it. I've had to do that a few times, just to maintain healthy boundaries in the relationship and things like that, when she was struggling. And she's, when it happens, she'll stop and you can literally see that change because it changes everything, like from how I think to how my body feels. And since I have chronic pain and I'm sensitive to a lot of things, that stress is enough to throw me into a flare-up of pain and fatigue and other symptoms. But yeah, in the moment for me, and sometimes it feels like being struck by lightning almost, like just the shock that runs through my body.
Totally. And that's why maybe we fear to do things like going to that graduation, just going back to the graduation. It's
or
like,
even applying, right?
Yeah. So tell how that magic.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, and that was, the kind of all the pieces before that sorry, let me backtrack that a second.
Okay,
And the question, ask your question again one more time, sorry.
Well, just how did it magically happen that you just happened to go from one thing to the other? How did that all go down? Because I think it's miraculous.
I'd come across the opportunity, or the information. I'd come across this program. I'd met somebody who had offered to, help me if I wanted to apply by introducing me to, like the program director, because I had explained my background and I'd said, my education is it's non-existent in terms of advocacy or clinic, anything related to that, except for real life experience. I've done these things in real life, and I had gotten to where I could acknowledge that the work that I did for other people was advocacy and it was a professional skill, even if I wasn't getting paid, even though I was doing it pro bono for a long time. And I still would do it pro bono if I could, but it was, for a long time, I still would just say, well, I'm a stay-at-home mom. And my kids were all teenagers. They were all in high school. And even though they had a lot of things they were struggling with at the time, just going through those ages, my life looked very different than it was in earlier points when I had really wanted to go back to college, but just felt powerless to do so. Every time I would think about it, I would freeze because I would get overwhelmed with all of the things I felt I had to do to get there.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to go back and restudy everything. And I don't remember most of the stuff that I learned in high school. I think that's true for a lot of us. We finished high school and don't use maybe 80% of it very often, unless it's really relevant to your job, right?
Yeah.
And so I would have to do all this work and then get my GED and then go through the undergraduate program, and that's 4 years, that's this many years. And there was all these just barriers that it was like, oh, well, you know, it would be this and it would be this and it would be this and it would be this. And so I would be overwhelmed and I would stop. Like I couldn't even think about it. But it was always this thing that I wanted. And the further along, the more time went on, the further away it felt. And it was one of the fears or one of the things that I really struggled with. I was reaching a point to where I felt it wouldn't ever happen. It was a dream that I had. It was something that I really wanted to do. And I don't have very many things like that I can pinpoint from a young age and say, I really want this. And so, it just seemed to get further away as my health got worse, as things in my life and my relationship got worse. And so part of me reaching a point where I could actually even leave and get to where I am today was making that decision to go to school. And I remember having heard about the opportunity and, having talked to this person, and I dismissed it initially. And it was kind of the same thing. Oh, I'd have to do all these things and I just don't have time and this and that, but it stuck in my head and I couldn't get it out of my head. And so a few months later, I called her back up and I started asking more questions about it. And I just decided and it really was very much just this moment of, realizing that the worst that was going to happen was that they would say no. And I would be in the same position I'm in now, or well, now at the time. Right. And going into therapy and saying, I've decided I'm going to apply to the program. And it was a really difficult process, even putting in my application. I had to write one of my own recommendation letters from one of my, so I'd gone to the program director and we'd had a really great conversation, and she'd said, okay, let me go to the dean and see what, I can do for you, right? Or what, what we would need to consider it. Came back with some criteria and said, if you can meet this. And so I was like, okay, going through that. And, writing a personal statement and filling out my resume was a huge one, because I didn't have a professional resume. I'd done it informally. I'd never held a paid position for it. So going out and actually listing in black and white the things that I did every day and the skills that I'd learned and just the broad area that it encompassed. I went from thinking what the heck am I going to put on my resume to I have too much stuff to put on my resume. What can I cut out? Like, what's the most important out of these things for the program?
Wow.
And, having to write this recommendation letter for myself from, one of my doctors that was one of my favorite doctors, was happy to recommend me, but just was very, very busy. So she said, well, if you write the letter, I'll read it, edit it, and sign it. Right. And so it was so weird writing it. And my therapist the whole time, she would chuckle. She'd go, this is like perfect therapy. She goes, tell the doctor, thank you for helping me with therapy, because I'm over here having to say all of these good things about myself. Right. And like talk myself up.
Right.
And that's hard.
Right. Especially being a worldwide.
Right. And it's hard, but, obviously in a genuine way, like I was, these are the things that led to it, but it's like, I couldn't be small. I couldn't be,
nope,
unseen. I needed to be seen. I needed to get their attention.
Yeah.
And so it was a very weird experience. And this is one of those moments of, sometimes you just wonder because of the way things happen. I had put my application in and I was waiting to hear back. And at the same time, I had made a decision to leave my now ex-spouse. And literally the day that I had made that, it really, I'd known I needed to leave, but emotionally it hadn't caught up with me yet. And the day that it did, I remember that's one of those moments where, when everything just changed. And my ex, had woken up, they worked nights, and so had gotten up to get ready for work and could read my body language very well and knew something was wrong, or up when something was up. And kind of bullied me to talk about it when I said I needed space. And so I was getting ready to go to therapy, and this comes up, and it comes up that I want to leave, that I wanted a divorce. And so my ex actually ended up driving me to therapy because, you know, and it ended up kind of being this like verbal bombardment, right, on the way to therapy. And so I get to therapy and I'm sitting in the waiting room, and usually I'm there, like usually I don't usually sit in the waiting room, actually, usually kind of the timing worked out and I would go in straight away. And I'm sitting in the waiting room and I'm bawling, like, and I don't bawl, I don't cry in public ever, right? That was another thing, right? Couldn't cry. And so, and I just told my spouse I want to leave, you know, I want a divorce, that like an hour ago. And I'm sitting there in my therapist's waiting room, crying my eyes out and wondering, you know, if I just made like, you know, like not the biggest mistake in my life, but you know, like how the hell am I going to do this? You know, just how am I even going to manage this? And I get the email from my, you know, program director asking or inviting me to an interview.
They're inviting you to what?
To an interview.
Oh, exciting.
That day, the day
my
that I
God.
decided to leave my spouse.
Oh,
Wow.
gosh, I got
Talk
goosebumps.
about one
Okay,
door closing and
right.
one door opening,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. And so that's how this opportunity came about. And clearly I got in. And I spoke to the dean while I was on this trip. And this is really, I want to talk about that, is that, you know, I decided as I was going through this program, it was such an amazing experience because it was both so much new experience. There were so many new experiences for me. And it was the first time that I'd really been in kind of that sort of a learning environment where I was challenged in the ways that I was. And I loved it. It was hard. There were moments where I definitely had a lot of anxiety. I had to overcome, you know, fear of authority figures, asking to turn an assignment late. You know, kind of all of those things that that, you know, I think most people go through, but it was like this, I don't know, it was just very, very intense. And I'm grateful because I had a lot of the faculty were all very, very understanding and, you know, always willing to work with me. And so, you know, it was a really great program to be in from that regard too, because of, you know, there was a lot of support. One of the benefits of being in the field that I'm in is that my colleagues tend to be very informed on trauma and you know, advocate consistently for things like self-care and taking, you know, prioritizing your time and your energy and understanding that sometimes, you know, work isn't going to be that priority. Sometimes you have to stop and take that day for yourself.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that applied in this program too, because you know, the whole program, it was a very holistic program. And so it was about, you know, not just advocacy, but understanding the things that we need to be able to, you know, in this, you know, in that particular context, it's navigating healthcare, being your own advocate in your healthcare and things like that. But it also applies, like, you know, these concepts are the same things that I've been learning in therapy for the last 6 years about, you know, mindfulness and self-care. And so it was very validating and reaffirming. And it also helped me kind of take things from both therapy and from this program and generalize them more, because I could see where there were relations between what, you know, concepts that were being presented. And the classes always had this weird tendency to correlate in some way to something I was working on in therapy. I kid you not.
Yeah,
It
like
was another book of ours.
experiences, right? Like the everyday experiences that then you get
Yeah,
to
well, like, so for
practice.
instance, we would be talking about, like, so part of the class was talking about you know, the role of like religion and spirituality in medical care. Okay. And talking, you know, and the program was really good about bringing in, like, you know, the scientific pieces, the psychological pieces, and kind of tying those together and talking about, you know, some of the neurological ways that that faith can benefit medical care, and you know, or neurological ways that affects us that ends up benefiting medical care because it becomes physiological. We experience physically what we feel emotionally, right?
Mind body
And
connection.
so, yeah, and so that took me a long time to accept, by the way. I wanted to pretend that wasn't
A bad
true.
word in religion.
Right, exactly. And so, you know, the program was really amazing, and I hadn't planned on going out to the graduation. My school was in Massachusetts. I'm in Washington State. That's a long distance.
Oh, okay.
And so I hadn't initially planned. And then last summer, I attended my daughter's graduation, who had struggled with her own health things, and because of that hadn't gotten to go to high school and had to get her GED after the fact, after she had recovered health-wise a little bit. And so, and just watching her go through that and knowing how much it meant to her, and like how significant going to school was for her and what that meant just everywhere in her life. And she was radiant and she glowed, and I just remember sitting there going, I'm going to go to mine. I'm going to go to my graduation. And so on May 18th, I walked in my graduation ceremony for my master's. And it was a pretty surreal experience.
Man.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
How long did it take?
glorious.
How long did it take to get your master's? Whoa.
Yay, beautiful. Let's see the inside. Nice. Oh my
There's life
God.
after religion right there.
Oh my gosh.
And, along with this program, though, has come just a series of crazy opportunities that I never expected. And one of the things that has been really actually something that here's transparency, I'm actually struggling with right now, is success,
Wow.
accepting success.
Yeah, not surprising being the way we were raised.
Yeah. I'm sitting here in a place that I wanted to be for a very long time, and had almost really given up hope that I ever would be able to be in this place where I had a career, where I, could be independent, and not, and, be able to make choices that fit what I wanted and what I needed that were healthy for me. To go to school, to have that accomplishment and say, yeah, I did this.
Yeah, and not just the stereotype of that you're a stay-at-home mom forever and that's all you're ever going to be, right? That's what was expected of us.
Right.
And
Well,
so-
and it also didn't help that that's kind of that's stereotyped in society too, right? Being a stay-at-home mom is very much stereotyped in society, so that then compounds what was already there from like the church. And so, it was huge and it was very surreal. I decided to fly myself and my adult children out with me, to celebrate. They weren't able to, go otherwise, then I just said, nope, we're all going. And my older brother came out, and two of my mentors came out.
Nice.
One of them I actually had lived about an hour and a half away from the entire time I was working with the program because it was virtual. She wasn't in the school, but she was in the organization that I did my practicum through. And we lived an hour and a half apart for like a year working together and didn't meet.
Oh my gosh.
And then we flew across the country and met for my graduation.
Wow.
I got the opportunity to sit down and have lunch with multiple of my colleagues in the area, and my program director, and one of my professors who is just this incredibly intelligent woman, and my two mentors, and just really, dive into this professional aspect of what I'm doing, and be among this community of very educated, very smart, very empathetic, very just compassionate people who have some pretty big goals, pretty big hopes and things that they want to see, from a professional aspect, specifically, that I also that tie, they connect with things that I've wanted for a really long time. And it just was a very, very, I don't know, there's just no words for it.
Yeah. I want to see the pictures of it if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah.
Would you call it heaven on earth?
Yeah.
If heaven still has anxiety, then okay, yeah, sure. That's kind of why it's coming up, right? Is that even with that success, I had some huge strides forward with my career. I'm in a place that I love. All of these successes are happening really close together, and finishing school was kind of that, from the point I decided to leave, I had been working to get away from the relationship, still working to get away from worldwide, still working, to get away from all of these things that were my past. And not, get away isn't really the right word, because it's still part of us. But when I moved last year, it was really a huge step in starting the school program towards shifting from being in survival mode to living, to being, to living my life. and choosing what I wanted my life to be like. And going to school was kind of one of those points of, okay, you know, it's going to be really busy, it's going to be insane, I'm going to have all of these things and all, you know, that I want to accomplish between now and then. And but after that I have no idea, and I guess we're just going to see what happens, as you know, when then happens. Well, then was the end of school. I'm there.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here at this point in this turning point in my life where I have opportunities, I have choices, in where I want to go with it, and the freedom to do so.
And maybe a possible
And-
relationship that might be blossoming, very possibly. So that, you know, hopefully that will not get in the way of your solid dreams, that you'll go forward.
You know, that's actually a fear I've expressed in therapy too. And it's something, you know, just getting to know people in general, it's hard. And, you know, when you've been betrayed, you know, because the cult, what they do is a betrayal, you know, it betrays your trust. And then, you know, that moved forward into my marriage, and that's all I knew. And everybody in my life now are people that I want in my life. I've, you know, spent a long time working through which relationships should stay in my life. And it's all, you know, it's family, but it's building new ones, starting that process.
Yes. Yeah.
Being aware of all of the things that I struggle with. I mean, not all, I'm sure I don't know all of it, but just, you know, having that dialogue going, you know, and that process of healing, and going forward and trying to find, you know, friendships in a whole new area, and just get to know people and trust.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard.
It is,
And
especially
it's a
because
different piece that, you know, the difficulty, like even applying to school, but it's all part of the process, and we'll see what happens.
well, because what, you know, in worldwide, we're afraid of everybody on the outside. We're afraid of the world. We're afraid to be anything other than a mother that stays home and takes care of her children. We're not encouraged to be anything other than that, to be who we really were meant to be. And so my mom, when she got divorced from my father, it ends up that she became this incredible artist, to make a living for all of us. And it was all not like a job either. Then she got a job at a place called Casa Bonita in Denver, Colorado, where you did caricatures like all day long. And then she illustrated for different doctors, these different muscle groups, and she did portraits, and she got
Oh,
money.
that's really
And
cool.
we had 6
But
children.
she couldn't be small, right? She couldn't just
She was
hide,
forced
and
yeah, she was
you know,
forced
she
to
had to take up space in the
Yep.
world and be there. And
I couldn't believe the risk that she took to do something that really wasn't solid money. And my dad was not paying hardly, you know, if anything, any money for us 6 kids. It was if
she was doing it on her
a couple
own.
$100
Yeah.
a couple $100 at best.
Yeah.
If you're lucky.
But you know, her drive, you know, as a mother, I could have a pretty safe guess that her drive was to, you know, to protect you guys and to take care of you, and to make that living possible, right?
Yes,
Outside of
absolutely.
worldwide and outside of that. And
I had to work and make my, you know, pay for all my own expenses of every kind, including my gas, my driver's license, my prom dresses, my whatever, you know, the insurance, my portion on the insurance, because she's trying to raise 6 kids. She never worked a day in her life when she got divorced from my dad, and she got involved in the worldwide as a teenager, believe it or not. So she never worked. And you know what's funny? As soon as she would get married, she would quit. And she'd been married 4 times, and every time she gets married, she quits. And it's like almost like, okay, I'm secure now. It's like, this is the way I was raised. This is the way it's supposed to be. That
well,
you're
it's that familiar, right?
yeah, go back to the way that we were before. Now that I'm married, I'm submissive under my husband. I'm submissive. And I'm nothing. And she would go back into this place
And
of
probably not even realize that that's what happened.
no, I don't
Yeah.
think so, but that's where she would fall into. And I hated seeing that. I would,
Yeah.
after a while, I get to know, well, yes, when she gets married, she's gonna just, you know, let everything go that she's worked so hard for, and just be a stay-at-home wife. And I don't know, it was really crazy, but I knew it was from the brainwashing of the cult that us women are nothing. And the only reason she did it before is because it was required to survive.
Right, it was
But she
necessary to
loved
survive.
it. She loved it. She really, really loved it. And she was
But
good.
it's hard to accept that too, right? The thing that brings you joy. I mean, she loved it. Like, I love what I do. And it took me time to accept not just that I could do it, but that I was good at it and that I should do it.
There you go.
Wow.
And
You know?
my mom, she does the best portraits you've ever seen. And what she did for these doctors doing muscle groups with all kinds of, veins, millions of
So
them.
she also had like a knowledge of anatomy, and I mean there was,
Oh my God, yes. I don't know
yeah,
how she did any of it. She didn't have knowledge of it, but she just, somehow she
she
managed.
learned it though when she did it. I bet that's,
She had to really
Yeah.
learn a lot. And
yeah, and that's what I meant, was that by doing so, like, she's still expanding and growing that area of knowledge and skill, and outside of worldwide, right? Outside, but things that people kind of generally take pride in, right? And you can't take pride in it. And that was one of those things that I realized on my trip. I realized during my graduation trip that part of the reason it felt so surreal was that so we, even though, like, I think we started doing birthdays when I was mid-teens. It was, kind of close to the time that we were leaving. But birthdays were always really awkward for me. And they were always, it's like, yeah, happy birthday, but we never really did a big thing. And it wasn't ever something that bothered me. I was fine with it. We're very casual with birthdays and holidays, but we would go out to dinner and something like that, right? It was always a good, nice family event. But it was still always also, like kind of, sorry, my watch started going off. Designed to, be something that everybody in the family could enjoy, right? And it was something that I liked and wanted, but it wasn't necessarily like, we're all here celebrating your successes, or, something that I've done that the people who care about me are proud of. And so, and that's really, like, birthdays were kind of really the only times where there would be some focus on me, right? But again, it was like there was always kind of other factors involved. Going to Massachusetts, that trip was about me. Like, that was my trip. It was what I wanted to do. And, I didn't just sit there and go, this is what we're doing. But, everybody was, my family is very flexible, but it was there to celebrate me, right? They were celebrating my accomplishments. They were celebrating, not even that, but, my family knows a lot about, the things like that we've been talking about here. And, just celebrating personal growth, celebrating getting to a point to where I could apply for school. Those are all huge landmarks for me. And so going there and being there in Massachusetts, and, everybody, like I said, my brother, my mentors, just, it was very surreal.
Yes, it was, because you
And
had
it was
obstacles, and
well, yeah. Well, and having
time.
like realized, like, just like accepting that, just being able to sit there and be comfortable with that knowledge.
Yeah.
It's weird.
It's
It's very weird.
because we're taught that we shouldn't have pride or success, because that will make us have pride if we have success. And so did you notice how, our parents didn't say, well, good job, or wow, that's so incredible that you did that, or is that you didn't get any of that? No.
And I don't remember really, like, I know my dad definitely didn't. And my mom was always more nurturing than my dad, and very before. And a little bit of a rebel. So I don't know if there was. I mean, I have the positive memories that I have from childhood are with my mom. But just the overall mindset and culture was definitely not one where encouragement and praise was
okay, about that, okay, so you're in Washington, but where you were in Hawaii.
We were in Hawaii, yeah.
I don't know how it was there either, but what I do know is that I moved to Denver when I was 13, and I came from California. So California is I don't know, women are definitely not treated like second class, not near as much as other states. Then I went to Denver, and they're very progressive. Women are definitely considered equal to men every way. So you didn't see women being second class. Then I came to Idaho, and oh my gosh, it was second. Women are
culture shock, right?
Yeah, it was big time culture shock. I remember the first appointment I went on was with a Mormon. That he was the one that was in the kitchen. Imagine I'm going to an appointment to help refinish a kitchen with my husband, and this guy's a Mormon, and his wife's not in the kitchen. So anyway, he looks at me, and I start doing my job, my part of the job, to explain what we do and blah blah blah. And he looks at me like, hello, you don't need to be saying anything, shut up.
Why are you speaking?
And I'm like, oh my God.
Mhm.
And so anyway, I did my job anyway. And you know what? We did not get the job. I was too, out
You were too assertive and
yeah,
you
and
were
they treat
you were
women
too
like
independent.
yeah, they treat women like shit really bad here. Like you're absolutely a stupid, dumb, just ready to spread your legs whenever we need kind of a person. That is how they treat women here. And I'm just saying, and I don't like it, and I don't see it changing either. As much as I've tried to pitch in and help here, it's not changing. And the girls are chasing the boys in high school and in junior high, not the other way around. And they just, I don't know, it's really completely strange. So not every place you go are women treated like that. They should be home being the mothers and take care of the home and spread their legs whenever they're being asked to. And it's not like that. And so I
Well,
think that's
culturally, I think as society, there's been a lot, if you look at just, over the last even just 100 years, changes in how we think of things like equity and equality, which are different things.
yeah.
But it is, yeah, I would imagine that would be a culture shock. The places that I've lived have been Hawaii, which is pretty progressive, and Washington State, which is still is a bit more mixed, but still there's a lot of like culturally, you don't see that as much here, at least in my experience. Definitely have run into it sometimes, but there's always that. But it's yeah, I think society overall is changing, and I think, like, I know at least like my daughter's generation is a lot more aware of mental health and the importance of mental health. And my hope as an advocate is that we'll see mental health and medical care really becoming more integrated, because the more and the more and the more that it's studied, the more, I mean, scientific studies support that there is a mind-body connection.
That's right. That's right. There sure is. Being that what we think about and worry about and fear kind of tends to show up in our bodies. And
Yeah.
it's becoming very scientific too. This one guy, Henry Wright out of Georgia, it was an incredible guy that has a big encyclopedia linking exactly the situations, thoughts that you were going through that caused this specific disease. And it's crazy, amazing, with doctors, psychologists, every kind of different people that were studying hard to get to the root issue, the root cause, definitely proving the mind-body connection. And I got to get my hands on that book, and we got in little groups of 6, and then we just go to the book and look up what each other was suffering with, and then find the root cause. And it was incredible. So definitely we're
I
getting.
think I mentioned it last time, but read The Body Keeps Score. I think you would like it.
I keep score. I'm gonna write
The
it.
Body Keeps Score. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is. It's like I said, I think I don't know, my daughter's generation, a lot of those individuals that age seem to be more aware of that. And I always one of the things that I think about when someone says something about, like a younger person having an opinion about something that, like, a complex controversial issue, right? That their opinion or thoughts on it are not valid or relevant because they're too young to really understand the complexity of the concepts. And it always frustrates me when I hear something like that, because we circle back to, how do you learn? You have to fail. You have to try.
Amen.
How do you're talking about, generations who are going to be the ones taking over when we're done. I mean, I now work with people who are my son's age, and at times, and it's weird, like, but it happens before you know it. And so, we want younger generation. Like, I love the fact that my daughter is so much more aware of, like, world issues than I was at her age, and so much more aware of social issues than I was at her age. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
And I think we need more of it.
We were stunted in worldwide, however.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's just kind of where it was, but yeah, it's a,
show us your pictures. I want to
I want to show the pictures, and I know we seem to run over time because it's always so much to talk about. So I want to get that. And let me see which one I'm going to start with. Okay. Where is my Zoom? Sorry, I put it right back there. Okay, let's go. Pictures. Okay. So I threw in a couple just because this is, I don't know, we had fun. My daughter and I we love nerdy things. We'll watch documentaries together, and we'll watch, we like to go to the museum. So we went to I'm going to say it completely wrong. It's the Worcester Museum of Art. And she's over here being a punk. This is actually something you can touch. The whole museum, of course, they've got signs that don't touch, but they had a couple of areas where you actually could. And this is a carving that the museum has where you can actually spin it on a turntable and see the progression of, how it went from stone to the carving of, it was a cathedral room that they had recreated in the museum. And so this is her, being a punk, right?
Awesome.
And touching something that was actually, you can actually touch. And then we
Worldwide
did,
would say you're having too much fun.
Yeah.
we're having too much fun.
Very
We had a great time. It was
Part of the world.
fantastic. It's gonna be one of those memories that I remember forever, is going to see my daughter, or with my daughter, to the museum.
Yeah.
So this one is also at the museum. They had, you could, like, armor you could put on, not everything, but like the helmet. And oh my gosh, let me tell you, I don't know how soldiers who had to wear helmets like this did not end up, I mean, maybe they did, with like spinal compression. That helmet was so heavy.
Oh, geez.
But and then this was us. We actually went and we're touring my school. It's a gorgeous campus, and I'd never been. So we went and I actually it was a Saturday or Friday, but school, sessions are out. So there wasn't really a lot of people on campus. Students weren't there, and we were wandering around the health science building, and this gal pops her head out, and we're like, whoa, and start talking to her. And it turns out that she was one of my classmates in one of my most recent classes. And so, like, made that connection. And we just had a good time. Like I said, it's a gorgeous campus. This is the building behind us is the president's building, or the president's house was. But now it's their, administrative offices. And then my favorite picture.
Where's that at, your campus?
It's in, I'm going to mispronounce it again. It's Worcester, Massachusetts. It's spelled very differently than it said. It's about an hour-ish west of Boston. And like I said, it was amazing. And this was me at my graduation.
Love
right
that.
afterwards. I'm still waiting on my, official graduation pictures to be available, but this is one of the ones that
Who are you hugging there?
That's my daughter. And then the guy behind her is in the teal shirt is my son.
Oh, gotcha. Looks like he's handsome.
He's a handsome guy. I got good looking kids for sure. But more importantly, good-hearted kids.
Oh yeah, that's way more.
I love it. I love the success. And I remember we were told it was using the world to the full. And I cried when I watched people graduating and going to college. I used to jog and I'd cry. I think, man, I didn't get a chance to do that. I didn't get a chance to graduate.
That was why I chose to go. I said, I've never walked for graduation. I've never been in an opportunity where I could walk for graduation.
Right.
I'm going to walk for my master's degree.
How long did that take to get that degree?
2.5 years.
Wow.
That's crazy.
So it was a little delayed because of my move. So I would have graduated last year because of my move. So and then there was there were 2 semesters where the classes that I needed weren't offered. So I had to wait until the spring semester to finish it. But about 2.5 years. And master's degree with no undergraduate degree and no GED. And I just
Wow, how'd you do that? I can't believe that.
It's like you didn't have to have like your bachelor's and all that in 4 years.
No, I mean, I was very much told. I got to meet the dean actually while I was there, and I met her. She was actually at my my entrance interview with my program director, which wasn't too surprising given what I was asking. And she was just very supportive and lovely woman. and at the interview. And when I met her, like I'd gone in to look at disability accommodations because of some of my health issues before the ceremony the day before. And that was why we were on campus that Friday with my daughter. That was part of it. And the dean was there in the facility where they were doing the graduation, and she saw me and recognized me and came over and introduced herself, and we sat and spoke for a while. And I found out on that trip, so, and this ties into the difficulty accepting success and difficulty accepting compliments. I've gotten a little better at that one, at least when it comes to professional stuff. But the dean of the graduate school is standing there telling me that she knew within minutes of the interview starting that she wanted me in the program.
Wow.
And that she hasn't regretted it. And she was standing there telling, the staff that was there talking to me about the disability accommodations, how I was the only student that they have ever admitted who did not have the prerequisite undergraduate degree for the program, for any of their programs.
It's cool that they're allowed to do it.
That's
It's kind
They
of
had to get a lot of waivers, I guess.
that's really cool because I taught life skills in a jail, and everybody in that whole jail, they had all these degrees, and they absolutely were so resentful that I got a job because I had life experience.
I had life experience.
And they really hated me for it. And
well, and part of that, I struggled feeling like my life experience wasn't valid too. Like, that it was less than somebody who had gone to college or had maybe gone and gotten a job and done it, as a profession versus, pro bono.
Right.
But somehow that made the knowledge that I had less valid. And school changed that for me though. Because going through the program, it was in part new information, new things, and it was also in part things that I already knew, but it helped me frame it, like it gave me a better solid framework for it, or articulated it in a way that was, really on point, that helped me. But it validated that knowledge that I'd had prior to, because I would go through this program and go, oh wow, I know this.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so it was both a learning experience, but also again very validating, and really just shining a spotlight on the fact that all of those things, that those self-taught things that I worked on through my life, just like I said, I like to learn. I'm very self-driven, and if I'm interested in something, I'm going to pursue it. And so yeah, it was very cool. It was very cool.
Really cool. And my boss even was like, I can't think of a better way to be a life skills teacher than having had real life experience. I've done some amazing things. And he goes, absolutely, you're more than qualified. So I got the job, and I did that 2.5 years, and I really loved it. It was my favorite job of all time until I had to move out of state. But
yeah.
anyway.
But yeah, because you were learning, and it's very cool. Like I said, it's life experience is, I don't know, sometimes there's no substitute for it sometimes.
No.
I know that, clients that come to me often have experienced trauma, and the fact that I've experienced it and I understand it helps me greatly in what I do.
Oh, yeah.
Directly and indirectly, because it helps me know how to meet them where they're at and help meet their needs. Because if they've experienced trauma in their medical care, that's going to affect how they interact with their medical care, choices that they make in their medical care. And so, having somebody in their corner who understands that and can help, work through that to the goal of, bettering their quality of life in their medical care, and in their life in general. But, the avenue is for my goal, or the avenue for my job is the medical system. It's very integral to what I do. It's one of the things that is, I think we're going to see coming up in the advocacy world as health advocacy becomes more widely used and more widely known, is a lot of people who realize that they're actually patient advocates that don't realize they are, because they've gone through experiences and things like that, like in the medical system, learning to navigate it for their own care, for a loved one's care, and I think that's what we're going to see, survivors that realize that they actually have this really needed and just pretty awesome skill set, you know?
Yeah. Well, Dan,
So.
would you be so kind as to kind of, would you be able or willing to just sum up what we've all kind of discussed in a just a grand way that would help us all to, get the little keys out of the whole thing? Is that something that you would?
As far as,
Just close us down to say?
Yeah, I can wrap it up. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
huh.
That's tough, huh? But
I just want to say, man, to anybody, what we see here is this woman that pushed through all the fear and all the things that we've been told, that's against us, right out of the Bible, don't use the world to the full. Yeah, all these things, all these programs, you listen to your heart, you listen to the voice of wisdom within you. The kingdom is within you. And you said, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to step away from man-made, religion, and I'm going to step into the great I am, who I am. And I mean, God created you and everyone for a purpose, to be here to do something amazing and special. And you found out what that is. And you said, I'm going to walk down that stage. And yeah, and look what happened. Look what happened when you listen to the voice, the inner voice. Whereas what Jesus said, the kingdom of God's within, turn away from these men, quit listening to these men. And you found, look at what you found, this big celebration, this wonderfulness. It was like the Bible says, all heaven was applauding.
yeah,
You made it back home.
I'm applauding.
Yes, yes.
Yay.
And it's like, it's just, it should be very encouraging that there's life outside of brainwashing. There's life outside of these boxes these men have put us in, these boxes to keep us in. They say, keep returning to us, keep listening to us, come. And you didn't. You listened to your own heart. You listened to your own mind. And I did a video on that the other day. I said, people, you are already connected. You're already connected. If it's true, the Bible says, I'm closer than your breath. I knitted you together in the womb. I know every hair in your head. I mean, how can we ever be separate? I did not put myself in the womb of a woman. I did not pull myself out of the womb of a woman. Something designated me to be here right now for this moment. And it's not to join a cult. It's not to be in Jehovah's Witnesses, Worldwide Church of God, and follow some crazy men, cantankerous men that really don't, a lot of them don't appreciate women. Women are second class. They were second class in our religion. They couldn't even get on the platform. I mean, if they got on the platform, they had to go to two women and they had to be sitting down.
Yeah.
If they were out in service, they had to tie a thing around their head to show their subjection to men.
Wow.
It was weird.
Yeah.
And so,
and listening, not just listening to your heart and mind, but learning how to differentiate what is inside you. When you have those moments of more, I don't know how to say, I'll share mine and then you can tell me if this is familiar. I'll have these things where I'm struggling to make a decision or with something that I want. And I really want to make this choice, but I like bounce back and forth. I can't make a decision. And every time I start to go back to this one, something will pull me back. And over time, what I've learned is that when that happens, that's that old teaching trying to bring it way back up. So that voice, it's like cautioning me, don't do that. That's not, that's not good. That's not, whatever the case is. Or you should do it because of this. Sometimes it's, well, I don't want to do this choice. Well, you should do it because of X, Y, Z, and it's really that training from being in a cult and growing up in a cult. And that the choice that I'm trying to make, that I want to make, has been the correct choice in those instances. And when I don't choose that, I generally regret it.
yes, and that's great. And you know something? My spiritual teacher that I was with, she would not give me the answer. I'd say, would you give me the answer? She'd go, no.
No, you
She would
can't.
make me think. She
Yep,
said,
you
you've
have-
got to start using your brain. Do you know it took me 10 years to start thinking? The governing body said you don't have to think. We
You
do
don't
all the
think.
thinking. We have all
We'll
the
think for you.
They
Right,
think
we'll
for
think
you.
for you.
We
Yeah,
have your spiritual connection
make it easy for you,
Yeah, we even have
Yeah.
your spiritual connection. God talks to us. He's put us in charge over you. And so we hear the voice. And
Yep.
so, but that's a normal thing that I couldn't make decisions either. for the long time. I'd have 50.
Well, I used to think it was
gone.
like my conscious, telling me, nope, like that's not a moral act. That's not, sort of idea, right?
Yeah.
That's what I used to think of it as. That's what it
Yeah.
felt like.
You know, one big one that set me back? The one big one that set me back was anytime I'd start thinking about, I've got to make some more money. I've got to make a little bit more
Mhm.
money. They had a scripture embedded in me, and it was called, be content with sustenance and covering. Stop trying to get more than just a
Oh,
roof
I know.
over your head. And you know what? I would be on the pinnacle of going like this and making some money.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden that voice would come in, be content with sustenance and covering, be
And
content.
then, bam.
Back down to bottom again.
Well, it's like, your mom, Angela, you're talking about, getting married and how it would change everything, all the success and the things that she loved and was proud of would just kind of go away. It's
Yeah.
it's that same pull back to that known and that comfortable. It's uncomfortable because it causes cognitive dissonance, and it's against what we really believe or feel to be true, but it's what is comfortable. That discomfort is comfortable,
Yes, right. So then
and
I
so
think
when
I
that's
say
not
it
there, we become uncomfortable, right?
You know,
So
I gotta say this one point. It's a strange point, and I won't tell you where the origins of it are
oh,
from.
now I'm curious.
Uh, yeah, they would shoot me down. But basically, it says we've all gone this way before. We've all had to walk through the fear. Anybody who's left a cult has had to walk
Has
through
to
the
walk through
fear. They've had to walk away from this yin and yang, this programming that's spinning in our heads.
Learning how to differentiate that
Yeah,
voice in
and
your
how to
head that's really
differentiate.
you.
What
You
is this
know,
voice? Is this God? Is this the devil trying to deceive me? And is this the world trying to pull me in, Satan's world? We've all, every one of us, I want to just say this, we've all had to walk that walk. It's like walking the plank, but the plank is stepping off into our goodness and who we were meant to be.
That's right.
well, and it's when you do it, one of the things that my therapist and I had talked about early on when I had decided to leave was the concept of freedom. And I had told her, I could not imagine what my life would be like after divorce. And it just wasn't something, like I couldn't bring it up. Like my brain would just stop.
Hmm.
And I could not conceptualize it. And she brings up this idea. She goes, well, what about freedom? It's like, I don't even know what that feels like. I know what that feels like now.
Yay.
It feels pretty good.
Congratulations.
A little weird and uncomfortable at times, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yes.
But
It
you
feels
did it.
good.
You did it.
Isn't the feeling afterward 100 times worth that little uncomfortableness when you
Yes.
got that diploma, when your brother was there and your daughters were there, and you were saying,
your
hey, I
friends.
broke free, man. I'm free.
Yeah.
I've
Oh
got
my
career
God.
now. I've got opportunities. I've got some security. I mean, isn't that way better than the damn fear those guys indoctrinated us in where we couldn't even move?
Yes. Yes.
It's liberating.
It is. I hope you do it again and again and again. I hope you
I
stay.
plan on it. I'm on a roll.
And maybe start singing. Maybe start singing again.
I want to go to that.
I sing for fun. Like when I'm doing things that doesn't require me to be on the phone, I always have music on, and I'll sing in the car, and I've sung like in front of my family and stuff like that. But I haven't gone and like done, I haven't done any public singing. But actually, one of my kind of, I've thought about doing this as a hobby, is getting some equipment so I could actually like a microphone that would be good, decent quality, and actually like create some songs. My mom was a musician. She taught me how to compose.
My goodness.
But again,
Wow.
you were talking about creativity and not tapping into that.
Uh-huh. Well, guess what? I just wrote
I've been told that that being, I've been told that working on, my creativity and bringing that out and letting that, be a part of my life will be beneficial. And that even goes back to that kind of neuroscience, right? The kind of the left brain, right brain ideas, which, you have the different areas of your brain, and if you don't use them, they go into disuse, right? Like that's pull out the creativity piece. So
you're going to use
part of healing.
I hope you use that one for sure.
You're going to use all of this that you've learned. All this call.
You're on a roll now.
You're on a roll now.
Yeah.
And tell
You know what's weird about it?
Huh.
There's this feeling like I'm waiting for the shoe to drop.
Don't let,
Yeah, it's always there.
yeah.
And that'll go
It
away.
is,
That'll
it's
go away.
there.
Yeah, I'm gonna feel it's all gonna be unplugged. I'm gonna
Right.
find out the world was ending and it's here it is, and I'm on
Yeah.
the wrong side.
Yeah, we
It's
have,
gonna drop. That's what it feels like, you know?
we totally can relate to that, can't we? But
Yeah.
now it's starting to go away. I'm so glad that
It's get, you know, it's gotten the further away I get from it, and the more, you know, kind of going back to the when I've realized that there's two parts of me. There's the part that's going, this is what I want to do, or this is what I don't want to do, and then there's the part that's going, you know, it's basically bullying me, right, into doing it. Well, that's where kind of some of this comes in. Talk to yourself like someone you love, right? That's one of my reminders. And it's also where some of the things like that we were talking about actually before we started recording was building my space where I can be, where it's comfortable, it's peaceful. I can be here and be present and just feel safe. And feeling safe in making those choices and in listening to, you know, that part of you that you know, should not listen to that old teaching of, you know, whatever it is at the time. The further away I get from it, and the more I go through these steps, and the more times I have experiences that I do have success, and I can see the differences in it that it's made in my life, the easier it gets to want to, the more I want to do it. And so the easier it gets to take those steps, even when they're hard, even when they're really hard. And I, you know, I also have a good support system too. Like I lean on my friends, I lean on my therapist, I lean on my family, and you know, I'm just going to see where it takes me. And that part of the liberating piece though, is knowing that no matter what happens next, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
That's good. And you're gonna find out nobody's hunting you down. You're gonna keep looking around for the boogeyman that Herbert W. Armstrong said was after you, and that Satan out there somewhere. And you're gonna realize you're just gonna drift away with it. Nobody's trying to shoot you out of the sky. Life wants to.
I'm just here living my life, you know?
That's right.
So, just here living my life.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, no, I always enjoy conversations with you guys. It's always very very enlightening and just a lot of good topics. So thank you for taking the time to talk again.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I know.
Living
my daughter and I are going on a long weekend trip to there's a small Bavarian style town here in Washington that we're going to go to.
Oh, you have to show us that. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I'll send you pictures, but just she's been such a big support while I was in school that I just wanted to do something and celebrate with her, you know. And so we're gonna go do that and just gonna see what comes next.
All right.
You know, so we'll see.
Song. Nobody's gonna break my stride. Nobody's gonna
nobody's gonna break my stride.
It sure is.
There, you know, actually I'll show you. I leaving to Massachusetts, I always have headphones on. I'm on the plane, right? And there were some kind of ironic songs that popped up like as I was taking off on each of my flights, that I'd turn on my music and it would be like this song, and I'd look at it and go, well, that's kind of appropriate. I'll send you those too. It was kind of funny. And that, you know, goes back to the sometimes just weird, like there's things that happen and moments that just, I don't know, where things just change, you know? And so
that was not an accident. Those
yeah, exactly. Well, thank you guys. Have a good rest of your weekend. And
thank you.
I'll send you those pictures.
Okay. Congrats once again.
Awesome.
All right, and bye everybody else who watches this too.
All right.
It'll be out there.
Thank you.